दृष्टै स्वभावजनितैर् वपुषश्च दोषैर् न प्राकृतत्वमिह भक्तजनस्य पश्येत् गंगां भसां न खलु बुद्बुदफेन पंकैर् ब्रह्मद्रवत्वमपगच्छति नीरधर्मैः. So this verse 6, being situated in his original Krishna consciousness position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee having a body, born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee, but despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges, which sometimes during the rainy season are full of bubbles, foam, and mud. The Ganges waters do not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. Advanced people consider the Ganges' spiritual nature and bathe in the river. Similarly, a devotee should not be judged based on materialistic point of view. That is the gist of the translation. So in the verse 1, we discussed about the various urges that one needs to control in order to become a Goswami, so that they can actually come to the platform of a devotee. First, one needs to become a Goswami or a controller of the senses so that he can engage his senses in Krishna's service and advance in devotional service and become a pure devotee, which is the ultimate goal of life or success of life. So, to that end, if someone wants to control the urges mentioned in the verse 1, which are all conditional, which sometimes show up, sometimes we have tendency to uh, speak something unnecessary or overeat, and all these kind of tendencies may come once in a while. So if we have to control those conditional urges, then we need to actually take care of our lifestyle. So that's what was mentioned in verse 2 and verse 3, that how not to over collect or engage that enthusiasm to over collect for oneself in Krishna's service. So in this way, various 6 things which destroy one's devotional service, and 6 things which actually are favorable to one's devotional service is explained. And then the association of devotees, because Jana Sangha and Sangatya, twice we saw the importance of either avoiding bad association or taking good association was mentioned or was overemphasized or was emphasized repeatedly in the first 2 verses. So in keeping with that theme, in the 4th verse we saw how to associate with the devotees. Yes, we need to associate with the devotees, but how to do that? So the 6 acts of love that is exchanged between devotees was explained in verse 4. Then in verse 5, we saw how even in the association, one needs to have discrimination to know who's a senior Vaishnava, who's an equal friend, and who's a newcomer, or one needs the help of the person. So in order to discriminate that, we saw in verse 5, Rupa Goswami advised how to deal with different kinds of devotees. And we saw an elaborate explanation of what are those 3 categories could mean as per various classifications, what it could mean we saw. And in this verse today, in the continuing in the same line, what are the challenges in the association of devotees? Especially because we saw in the last verse, verse 5, there was a very specific direction that one needs to take shelter of a pure devotee. Can someone remind me what was it exactly about a pure devotee that was mentioned? What is the characteristics of that high level devotee or Uttamadhikari that one needs to take shelter of? Can someone remind me?
They see devotee in everyone.
He sees devotee in everyone. Okay, good. Agape Pro?
That they are averse to fault finding.
Yes, they are averse to fault finding. Yes, what the whoever answered the earlier, that is also true. It's also one quality of Uttamadhikari. But deriving directly from the translation of the verse 5, Nindadi Shunya Hridamipshita Sangalabhya. Anya Nindadi Shunya. means that this person's heart is completely devoid of finding any faults with others. So when we find such a devotee, and when we try to take shelter of that devotee, because he is a guru, he is the most advanced Vaishnava, so he is very crucial to our spiritual advancement. So that's what was advised in the last verse, how to deal with the different devotees, but specifically how to deal with an advanced Vaishnava. So after saying all that, and we go and take shelter of a senior advanced Vaishnava, are there any challenges in doing that? That's what is being discussed in this verse. Yes, we can find a very great advanced Vaishnava and we can go and take shelter. But after taking shelter, when we try to deal with that person, when we try to serve under that person's instructions directly or from distance, we can have challenges in dealing with them. So what are those challenges that can come up while dealing with a senior advanced Uttama Adhikari? That is what will be discussed today in verse 6. Is this kind of clear, the context for this verse? In verse 5, we saw one needs to take the associations, especially of a Uttama Adhikari. And today we will see what are the challenges that might come while trying to deal with a Uttama Adhikari. That's what the cautions are given in this verse. Srila Rupa Goswami is giving us a caution. Okay, you're trying to deal with a Uttama Adhikari, so better be aware of these things, how to deal with that Uttama Adhikari. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also says, this verse mentions how a Madhyama Adhikari deals with a Uttama Adhikari, how he should deal with a Uttama Adhikari. So verse 6 has 6 warnings against offensive materialistic mindset and behavior that one might exhibit towards a pure devotee. So here there are totally 6 categories, which is derived from Srila Prabhupada's translation and purport. So Srila Prabhupada clearly mentions how criticism of the bodily defects of a Vaishnava is considered a no-no, one should not do. And also criticism or neglect because of birth. Someone is born in a certain country or in a certain caste or in a certain part of the world. So due to that, criticizing or neglecting a person or a devotee especially is considered no. And also criticizing the apparent misbehavior, like sometimes people bring in certain habits from a certain kind of culture that they come from, so criticizing that. And observing a pure devotee from a materialistic vision. Materialistic vision is superimposing one's own understanding of moral values and certain values from our own upbringing and superimposing that on a pure devotee. That is also considered materialistic vision. And say no to mistreatment of an empowered devotee. If a specific personality is highly empowered and he makes certain adjustments, or he endeavors to serve the Lord in certain ways, others finding faults with that due to envy, that's considered a mistreatment of an empowered devotee. And also disciplining, advising, or correcting an empowered devotee is also considered an offense. So we will see the details of these things that Srila Prabhupada presents and other Acharya commentaries also. So Srila Prabhupada is writing about each of these 6 categories. So criticism of a bodily defects of a Vaishnava. So the main one should not, Srila Prabhupada simply puts it like, one should not criticize but overlook such defects. What kind of defects? The bodily defects of a Vaishnava. Because in the translation, Srila Prabhupada writes how a person may be born with a deformed body, or a diseased body, or an infirm body, a body with a bad complexion. So these kind of imperfections may be seen very prominent in the body of a pure devotee. But we should not criticize based on those external bodily defects of a Vaishnava, but overlook such defects. Why we should overlook and what we should actually focus our attention on, that also Srila Prabhupada will mention. We will see as we read the purport sequentially. The main consideration is the pure devotional service of the devotee. What we should rather focus on, what is it he is doing as part of his service to Krishna. So what is his devotional service to Krishna? That's what one needs to actually consider, not his bodily defects. So to consider a Vaishnava's bodily defects is offensive. Such an offense is very serious, dangerous, and obstructive. that offense can be obstructive to our own devotional service. So we need to safeguard from committing offenses based on the bodily defects of a Vaishnava. Especially this verse is referring to a Uttamadhikari. The next category is saying no to criticism or neglect of due to birth. So then Prabhupada picks up this important topic of Goswamis, because there are devotees who take birth in the Lord's family or in the family of Acharyas, and they get this title of Goswamis. However, we all know from the first verse, the real Goswami is one who is actually is controlling, is a master of his senses and engages his senses in Krishna's service. So the Goswami title, that's why Prabhupada says, is not hereditary. Rather, it's a monopoly of a pure devotee. Prabhupada writes in the purport that the Goswami title is actually a monopoly of the pure devotee who controls his senses and engages it in Krishna's service. It's not hereditary. It's a question of qualification. So then Goswami family devotees and devotees born in ordinary families should be treated equally. There should not be any distinction. Okay, these are Goswamis born in or devotees born in ordinary families. These are special families. There may be respect that each other may show. We may consider them respectfully, but they cannot treat others as lower. Oh, okay, these are not born in a family of Goswami family, so they are inferior. That kind of an attitude should not be maintained. To call a devotee American, etc., and discriminate on such grounds is offensive. So a pure devotee may not be born in a Brahmana or Goswami family, but because he is engaged in devotional service, he should not be neglected. So there are various historical references from our parampara that we can give for all these, so that we will discuss at the end as a discussion point that what in the various in the history of our sampradaya, what are the various examples that we can think of for each of these categories that we will discuss at the end after discussing Srila Prabhupada's purport. And the third category, so far we saw about bodily defects, that having a diseased body, having a physical disability or infirm body or a bad complexion, these kind of things is first category. Second category of birth, a kind of family, caste, or a country, that is due to birth. The third category is criticism of apparent misbehavior. This category is explained more in detail by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Here Srila Prabhupada mentions how even if a devotee sometimes seems to engage in abominable activities, he should be considered a saintly person, because his actual identity is that of a servant of Krishna. He is not to be considered an ordinary person. So this verse has elaborate purports and commentaries. So each Acharya presents it in a different perspective and viewpoint. Srila Prabhupada says, if a devotee, specifically he is considering here because this verse is focusing on a Uttamadhikari, even if suppose the Uttamadhikari sometimes seems to engage in abominable activities, he should be considered a saintly person because his actual identity is that of a servant of Krishna. He is not to be considered an ordinary person because he is doing something which we cannot externally understand or we consider it as abominable. We'll discuss with the examples later. And the fourth category is saying no to materialistic vision. What is materialistic vision? Judging someone based on our material conditionings or our material value system. So here Srila Prabhupada says one is superior. Say, for example, somebody has a certain way of dressing or certain way of managing or speaking. So trying to consider superiority or inferiority based on that. So one is or having an accent or not having an accent. So many kind of external visions that we can superimpose on a pure devotee. So when Srila Prabhupada also came here, he had a strong Bengali accent. So, but not considering one as superior or inferior, based on those external considerations is considered looking at a person with materialistic vision. Rather, Srila Prabhupada says one is superior or inferior according to his spiritual development in Krishna consciousness. So one is forbidden to observe the activities of a pure Vaishnava from a material point of view. This is very injurious. One should try to see the internal features and devotional service of such a devotee and in this way be protected from offensive mentality and himself become purified. So if we tend to see the internal features of a devotee in general, or specifically here of a Uttamadhikari, and see the devotional service of that devotee, and in this way then we can protect ourselves from the offensive mentality. Then because we see their internal features and devotional service, we lose our tendency to judge them from an external point of view. And in this way, just because we actually gave the benefit of doubt and are trying to see the actual essence in their hearts, we will get purified. So this is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's purport on 9.30. He says, if we look at a devotee who might be committing something bad, but if we think, oh, he's a devotee, he's committed to serving Krishna, he will gradually become good. If we consider like that, then just because we see that devotee as Dharmatma, as a person situated in the path of righteousness, we ourselves will become purified and get situated in the path of Dharma, just because we see that in others and give them a benefit of doubt. So those who think that Krishna consciousness is limited to a certain section of people, what is the cause of this materialistic vision? From where this comes? So there are three categories given here, or three criteria given here by Srila Prabhupada. He says, generally, when people think, oh, Krishna conscious or bhakti actually belongs to a certain section of people, or a certain section of devotees, or a certain tract of land, or generally prone to see externally. So such people are called neophytes. So these are the three criteria. When a person thinks using those criteria, then he is prone to see people from an external vision. So what are those three? It is seeing a certain section of, is thinking that bhakti is limited to a certain section of people. Generally, Indians might think, oh, it's only for someone in India. Or some may think, oh, this is only for people from a particular religion, Hindus, or all these kind of things, a certain section of devotees, or a certain section of people, or a certain tract of land, only those born in India, or something like that. So in this way, this kind of conditionings can make one generally prone to judge others externally. And the next category is saying no to mistreatment of an empowered devotee. So this is the fifth category. Srila Prabhupada writes how an empowered person who is actually engaged in the confidential service of the Lord should not be treated as an ordinary human being. Prabhupada literally speaks about himself here. He says how it was very clear how much he was empowered because he preached the holy name for the very first time in the history of the planet, that he brought the holy name throughout the planet Earth. And this was something which required empowerment of the Supreme Lord. So he was clearly proven to be empowered, but still there were devotees who were finding faults with his methods, asking him why he is doing this or why he is doing that. So treating an empowered person, but like Srila Prabhupada, as an ordinary human being and trying to be jealous of an empowered Vaishnava, or trying to bring him down from his platform, considering he was just a business person, so, or he's just a manager, so he could do that. So these kind of bringing down out of jealousness, bringing down from his platform of being an empowered pure devotee to considering him an ordinary human being with material conditionings, that is actually a mistreatment of an empowered devotee. And attempts to discipline advice are correct. It's an offense to consider an empowered Vaishnava an object of disciplinary action. It is offensive to try to give him advice or to correct him. So here, Agape also asked a question. Srila Prabhupada was once advised by a person, oh, why are you writing magazines? Write actually books, because people will read these newspapers, they will just throw it. But if it is a book, they will just save it for the future. So Srila Prabhupada saw that his spiritual master actually spoke through this person, because he could see the value in the instruction. So this kind of advice is not considered actually offensive. It's a service actually. This is actually Agyata Sukriti. This person might have actually done a great service to Srila Prabhupada without his knowledge, like a casually. But he will get a great benefit for being that instrument in reminding Srila Prabhupada the instruction of a spiritual master, and actually changing his strategy for preaching. So that is not considered an offensive. It's actually, that kind of advice is not considered offensive. Rather, if someone goes and tries to advise thinking this person is actually is not knowing how to render service to Krishna, so let me actually correct his ways, with a kind of a contempt and also with an offensive mood and with fault finding tendency. So that is what is going to make something as offensive. What sounds externally is one thing, but what is internal is also very important in making these advices. If the idea is to bring down this Vaishnava, then that kind of an advice is considered to be, or seeing that this person is someone who's low, so I just want to prove my superiority by advising this person. So those kind of attitude is what is considered offensive. Advising or correcting both could be considered similar, but correcting is very specific than advising. Advising could be like, oh, this could be like this, but correcting could be, oh, this should not be like this, what you did is wrong. So it is not considered very it is considered offensive to try to correct an empowered Vaishnava, thinking that he does not understand Krishna's will and I can have a better judgment than a pure devotee. So that kind of an attitude is what considered offensive. Coming to this question asked by Prabhu Agape, that if a pure devotee maybe inadvertently makes some mistakes, so then trying to correct that, is it offensive? That's what, again, one, it's not offensive to give any helpful corrections or helpful assistance, but what is the mode in which it is done, that is also very important, and how it is done. Is it to show that, okay, you made a mistake and I know better, or something like that? What is the attitude with which that is being done? That is the most important. Still, even if the attitude is right, externally there are ways and time, place, circumstance in doing it. If that is something very simple, if it could be done in private, that if that correction, that is better. So publicly try how it will happen. So that sensitivity is what is important. And once His Holiness Jayad Vaidya Maharaj, that time he was a Jayad Vaidya Prabhu, he was going on a walk with Srila Prabhupada, and he asked Srila Prabhupada, how do we see when a pure devotee has imperfections? Srila Prabhupada turned and said, a pure devotee does not have any imperfections. Again, he asked, but when we see some imperfections, how do we have to understand that? Prabhupada said, I'm saying a pure devotee does not have any imperfections. He is perfect because he is a pure devotee. He is fully surrendered to Krishna. Then Jayadvaita Maharaj tried to clarify. Prabhupada, sometimes we see a pure devotee may quote a verse, misquote a verse, say a verse, like say a word in a verse wrongly. Srila Prabhupada said, that's okay. He said, so the understanding of, because Srila Prabhupada himself would sometimes, if you see the lecture transcriptions, I remember personally, I was just beginning to practice, and I was given a service to transcribe a particular lecture or something like that for a souvenir. And then this verse from Bhagavad Gita was quoted, but one of the words was not right. One of the word was wrong. So I took it to my authority and said, like, this is from Prabhupada's lectures transcription, but this word is wrong because the actual verse goes like this. He said, what do you think? You know better than Srila Prabhupada what he says. You just put it there. So I was like, no, this verse is like, I know this verse, and this verse does not use this particular name of Arjuna. He uses a different name. But he said, no, whatever is there, you just use it. So then there, Srila Prabhupada was mentioning to Jayadvaita Maharaj, actually, oh, that is okay. That things is because of the material body, memory, it kind of is limited by the memory, old age, and all these things. He said, what is the devotee that he will never have imperfection is in his complete surrender to Krishna, there is no imperfection. He knows everything that he does is only for the pleasure of Krishna, and he actually acts and does everything that he thinks and acts for the pleasure of Krishna. So in that way, he is perfect. There may be in the external manifestation of it, there may be some mistakes. So Srila Prabhupada once sent a disciple to preach in Pakistan, and then he later knew that the people there actually they were murdered. Some of he just heard that there was like riots going on and religious people are being killed like that. So then he really felt, I should not have sent Bhavananda Prabhu, and he was actually very Brahmananda Prabhu actually. He was very anxious for him to come back. When he came back, actually Srila Prabhupada, when he came to know that Brahmananda Prabhu was back, he personally ran from his room. He went and embraced, met Brahmananda Prabhu on the way, and he actually shed tears. He said, "Sorry for putting you in, like endangering your life actually." So he means these are things which are like, and rather we can see the perfection of his heart through even a decision externally seem to like might be a mistake or might be a lack of judgment or something like that. It only brought out his care for a disciple that he had, a genuine feeling for a disciple that he had. So in that way, a devotee's perfection is mainly the perfection of his attitude in surrendering everything to Krishna and serving Krishna for his pleasure. So if we are trying to correct or advise, we need to know how it has to be done. Especially if it's a senior person, is it okay to do it in public? Is it necessary to do it in public? And what kind of attitude we have in doing that? All that matters. Does that answer your question, Prabhu?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Radhika Mataji, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So the first point you said, like in the 6 warnings, the first point is bodily defects and second is birth.
Mm-hmm.
Both under the coming under materialistic vision, is it right, Prabhu? Those also coming like
Materialistic vision.
So why you put like 3 points then? Like all are coming to materialistic vision, right?
So Srila Prabhupada actually specifically mentions all these in his purport. If you see, there is like a slight difference. What he seems like, one is like body is an external thing. There is faults in that person's body and there is faults in that person's birth, so which is being pointed out by us. But when that person is having a particular particular behavior, like, okay, he may be actually little harsh in the way he speaks, or he may be actually little rough in his behavior or something like that. We are trying to see, oh, just because he speaks like this, how can he get angry or something like that we are trying to judge him based on our vision of value system, what is right, what is wrong, how one should behave. So we have a certain value system. We take that value system and match and try to match that person, size up that person with our value system. That is what is mainly being referred as materialistic vision.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
So going through Srila Prabhupada's purport, I had shared my notes also for this particular verse. So we'll just go through that. So Srila Prabhupada's purport, already we saw the main points here, the 6 categories. Again, just for this, so that we don't miss any of the points, we just go through the purport of Srila Prabhupada. If you have a book, it'll be helpful for you to refer. So Srila Prabhupada says how Shuddha Bhakti, he starts with that. The Shuddha Bhakti, the activity of the soul proper, is performed in a liberated condition. That means, and also in the translation, if you see the very first line, so the qualification of a Krishna conscious devotee is that he does not identify with his body. He personally does not identify himself as this body. So for us to look at his body and think he is that body and he has all the defects that the body exhibits, is to actually bring him from his spiritual platform to a material platform. So that is where the offense actually begins. So he does not identify himself as his own body. So that is the first qualification of this devotee. But for us to look at that devotee and think that, oh, he has certain body, so he is such and such. So that means we are bringing him from a spiritual platform to a materialistic platform. So that's what Srila Prabhupada is saying. The Shuddha Bhakti is an activity performed on a liberated condition. He is beyond the bodily platform. And he also mentions what is unalloyed devotion, Avibhicharani Bhakti. So he explained that, and he says Bhakti Yoga is the proper activity of the soul, and when actually engages in unalloyed, uncontaminated devotional service, he is already liberated. So how to understand somebody is liberated is if they can actually perform the Shuddha Bhakti, Anya Bilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. So naturally they are already liberated. So therefore one should not see a pure devotee from a materialistic point of view. Unless one is actually a devotee, he cannot see another devotee perfectly. So this is also one aspect that Srila Prabhupada brings. Unless somebody is on a certain kind of spiritual level, then he cannot actually see the devotee properly. So one needs to be an advanced devotee to gauge another advanced Vaishnava. And in that connection, he again explains Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama, because it is the qualification of a Madhyama who can actually differentiate the categories. Okay, who is an advanced devotee, who is a newcomer. So that is actually a Madhyama platform, one who has the ability to do that. So Srila Prabhupada is actually saying, okay, at least one needs to come to the Madhyama platform in order to understand how to recognize a Uttamadhikari and how to deal with that Uttamadhikari. And according to Bhakti Vinod Thakur, this whole verse is, he says, this is how a Madhyamadhikari treats a Uttamadhikari, that he does not treat him based on materialistic vision, or he does not correct him, or he does not take disciplinary action against this person. So this is how a Madhyamadhikari deals with the Uttamadhikari, and that's how he makes spiritual advancement. So no one should criticize the bodily defects of a pure devotee. If there are such defects, they should be overlooked. So someone remembers any scriptural passages where a devotee was criticized or through because of his bodily defects? Yes, bro. Agape?
Haridas Thakur was criticized for coming from a Mohammedan family. He wasn't allowed in the temple.
That could be considered as birth, right? So bodily defects of a pure devotee, bodily defects, any criticism or any... Yes, Rohan bro?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhuji, in the Mahabharata, Vyasadev was
when he came before Amba, Ambika and Amba.
Amba and Ambalika, yes.
Thank you. Radhika?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Like Astavakra Muni is criticized by Ravana.
Yeah, Ashtavakra Muni also. Yes, true. So these are various examples of someone considering the bodily defects of another spiritual person or an advanced devotee, and because of that causing damage to their own spiritual life. So then the other category is, even if a devotee sometimes seems to engage in abominable activities, this is the section where Srila Prabhupada mentions about that. A saintly person, because his actual identity is that of one engaged in the loving service of the Lord. In other words, he is not to be considered an ordinary human being. And then Srila Prabhupada takes up this category of a pure devotee may not be born in a Brahmana or Goswami family. This is what you mentioned about Haridas Thakur. He being Brahman and born in a Muslim family, he was like, many times he was he was treated with like contempt when he was trying to chant or speak about the holy name. So people would think, oh, you are born in such and such family, so how can you speak about the holy name to me who is born in a Brahmana family or something like that. So that kind of a judgment against a pure devotee is considered an offense. And Srila Prabhupada goes on to elaborate how the Goswami is a title given based on one's qualifications, not because of one's birth. So and that's why Srila Prabhupada says the title Goswami is actually a monopoly of the pure devotees. And he also says that, okay, those people who are born in the Goswami family, we are telling them, but those who become Goswamis, they cannot think, oh, now I have become equal to these devotees born in the family of Acharyas or family of the Lord. If they become jealous or if they become puffed up, he says they also fall from that platform of a Goswami if they feel like that, artificially puffed up because of attaining a particular status. And if we consider the bodily defects of a Vaishnava, we should understand that we are committing an offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. And this whole concept is being explained how this mad elephant offense, Vaishnava Aparadh, it causes destruction to one's spiritual life. So one can avoid, like he says, how to avoid this external vision. One should avoid observing a pure devotee externally, but should try to see the internal features and understand how he is engaged in transcendental loving service of the Lord. In this way, one can avoid seeing the pure devotee from a materialistic point of view. So we already saw how one one should not observe a Vaishnava from a materialistic point of view, rather look at what is his internal mood of executing devotional service and how he is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. In that way, he will be we will be avoiding the pitfall of judging a Vaishnava from an external perspective. So, and Srila Prabhupada again, we saw earlier also these three criteria he gives, that how if a person thinks Krishna consciousness is limited to a certain section of people, devotees, or tract of land, then we become prone to. So I'm repeating these points because they will also come in, you will also see them in the assignments. So such neophytes, unable to appreciate the exalted service of the advanced devotee, try to bring the Mahabhagavat to their platform. So when they think like that, so then they go and give correction. Oh Swamiji, why are you initiating people who are not born in Brahmin family into as Brahmanas? So there were many people ask questions Srila Prabhupada, or even create a whole movement against him, or try to protest against him when he goes to Dham and all these things happen. Mother Nirali?
Okay, I have two questions. One, the passage, what you just said about if a devotee is engaging in abominable activities, he should not be considered an ordinary, human being. It's you don't judge that. But then, can you give an example of that? That was my first question. I guess I can let you answer, and then I'll ask my second question.
So there was one great devotee called Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj. He was living when Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was in the planet. He was living at the same time in the area of Navadvip and Mayapur. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur really understood how great a Vaishnava Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj was. But he was totally aloof and he was very difficult to deal with also. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur engaged two brahmacharis from his ashram to go behind Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj and collect his maha whenever he leaves and eats and something, pack it and send to different mutts all over India as Mahaprasad so that they can eat and purify themselves, because it's the Mahaprasad of a great advanced Vaishnava. He engaged two people incognito to follow Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj. At times, if he realizes something like that is happening or somebody is trying to disturb him, Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj was coming from a community of fishermen in Bengal. So he had a certain language. So he would just start abusing them with that foul language from his previous background. He would just give them some foul words. Actually, he's completely absorbed in Krishna's service as a Mahabhagavat, but he just gets disturbed that somebody is disturbing his bhajan or something like that. Because of his previous background, he would just use the same language and give some foul words. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur many times warned these brahmacharis, don't go too close, maintain enough distance so that you don't offend him, because he might have those things coming from his background or something. You may think, oh, how can a pure devotee speak a bad word or something like that? Like Srila Prabhupada calling people as rascals, some people cannot. Well, like I've seen, like, how, okay, anything is fine, but why you call someone as rascals? Why you call someone as like fools and like really go heavy and all these things? Why? If you're a pure devotee, you should not have anger and all these things. So even in Prabhupada's situation, many people like found it very difficult. Even in India, in the Juhu Pandal program, when Srila Prabhupada became very angry at a person for asking something related to Mayavad, then immediately the reporters like kind of started saying like, okay, then why a saintly person needs to get angry? So that's how so because they see that from their own value system, so they're trying to see. So from our understanding, oh, how can you call someone a rascal? How can you call someone a fool? Maybe it's considered like a bad thing. So, but not judging the devotee based on that. Because this question comes, oh, can people then use this particular verse as an excuse to abuse people, like do all kinds of things and then say, I'm an advanced devotee and everything is exempted and there can be no disciplinary action? So no, acharyas clearly write a commentary. If a devotee makes, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes, if a devotee makes a little advancement and thinks that now I have become a devotee and starts to engage in sinful activities, that is not being included in here. That person is considered to be taking shelter of the weeds growing. In the name of bhakti, he is taking shelter of the weeds growing around the creeper of bhakti. That cannot be considered. At the same time, see, we don't need to accept that person as a shelter or anything, but we can say that Krishna cannot give mercy to that person. If he's still the heart of his hearts, he's only like he's committed to only worshipping Krishna. So our attitude is there may be some action to rectify the external situation, but we cannot say this person cannot be a devotee or anything like that. That is up between him and Krishna, because when he goes through that punishment, maybe that's what he needs to he needed to go through to awaken his like kind of the sense, and then he might become more committed to the path of bhakti. Because Bilva Mangal Thakur in his own life, he actually gets advice, why don't you actually focus your attention on Krishna? And he sets out on the path, and then he sees some women, and then he gets attracted. So and if someone judges him at that point of time, how can you be? But the same Bilva Mangal Thakur goes on to become such a great Vaishnava that Krishna comes to him every day to listen to what he is singing. So consciousness is a dynamic thing. We cannot put someone into a box. At the same time, nobody can take advantage of their position in a society, in an organization, any kind of spiritual position. They cannot use it to exploit others. That is never considered like given a token in this verse.
Okay, that's helpful. So I had one other question. I don't know if this is really the right forum for it, but I'm going to ask it. So, so like there are demons that have come, that, you read about in the Bhagavatam where they have come, but they, I think of like the gatekeepers, Jay and Vijay, they were devotees of the Lord, and they wanted to just partake in the pastime. And so they come as demons, and as demons on the earth, they commit all kinds of terrible things. And so it's hard for me to understand, how are they considered in this category where they're committing abominable activities and we're not to judge them also? Like, do they fall in that category also? I don't know.
Yeah, ultimately, in one sense, they are like devotees who have come in that form. Recently, you can also listen to, there was a lecture in the Bhakti Center Pathway, Nitai Padakamala series, that Nityanand Prabhu delivering Jagai and Madai. So someone asked the question, okay, Jagai and Madai gets the mercy, but what about those people who suffered because of Jagai and Madai?
Yeah.
What happens to them? Like, they will get mercy, and they become Vaishnavas, but what happens to those people who were afflicted? So the answer was like kind of, it's based on each one's consciousness, like how they are letting go. Similarly, it's not that we are not these bodies, we are spirit souls. Whatever damage that happens could be on a material level. So ultimately, taking shelter of Krishna is the only way. So there is both sides to this story also. Like Nityanand Prabhu just delivered Jagai and Madai, but what happens to all the hurt that they actually... So when Jagai and Madai got their heart got transformed, they actually asked this question to Nityanand Prabhu also. We had committed so much offense to so many people, so how do we... So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, okay, construct a guard. Like a river guard means, I don't know how to say that in English. Like a kind of
a boundary,
Like
yeah,
rank.
yes, where you can use actually the river, and to either to use the river or to cross the river like that. And in that way, generally committing like performing services and being repentful. So, and whoever saw, because there is one side of asking forgiveness, and the right mood is also to let go of like those hurt and then actually forgiving. So this is the test for them, to be repentful, and the test for the others is to actually forgive. So when the other person has transformed. So yeah, it's when you have to live through it, it's quite difficult. But everyone's court of purification is different. It's stitched different. For someone, they are on the giving side, someone are on the receiving side.
Thank you.
So the next section is on the commentaries. So let's just check out the commentaries on this verse after Srila Prabhupada's what Srila Prabhupada mentions in his letters or purports. Prabhupada says, one who offers me respect but is envious of the bodies of others and is therefore a separatist never attains peace of mind. This is the shloka spoken by Kapiladev to Devahuti in 3rd canto, 29th chapter. Because of his inimical behavior towards other living entities, he says like, why people commit offense, like the reason for offenses comes into picture, that somebody cannot actually manifest ecstasy is due to offenses. So when he says how to counteract offenses, he says respect all living entities, because his strategy is, if we in general respect everyone, then we will also tend to respect devotees. It will become natural and easy. So in general, respect all living entities. That is the strategy that Kapil Dev says. So then when you come across devotees also, you will naturally be respectful. So that's why he's saying, see Krishna's presence in all living entities and respect all living entities as parts and parcels of Krishna. In that way, you will avoid this offensive mentality, and also specifically committing offenses towards devotees in the association. So in that context, this particular verse comes. He says, those who can do that. So out of anger, out of actually loving anger, he says, even that person's deity worship is useless, that person's spiritual practice is useless. But Vaishnava Chakravarti Thakur says, it's not that it's literally useless. It's just like kind of mother telling a child, if you do this, I'll actually denounce you. You will never be my son again, or you'll never be my daughter again. Like, it's kind of a loving and loving anger. It's not that they're going to completely denounce. But in that mood, Kapil Dev says, oh, all that worship that person does goes to vain. It's like pouring ghee in on ashes. There is no sacrifice. There needs to be fire on a sacrifice to be accepted by the Lord. So he says like that. So in the same context, this verse is also spoken, that how if a person, one who offers me respect but is envious of the bodies of others, so then actually that separatist mentality will not bring him peace of mind. He will never be happy. So here we are saying this in the context of how judging a pure devotee based on our materialistic vision will make us peace, will make us lose our peace of mind. And there's a letter that Srila Prabhupada writes. So if two things be, he's expecting one, he's asking oneself to be exemplary, then teach others to be exemplary. If one has not come to that high standard, he cannot judge or criticize others. So it does not mean someone is a pure devotee means he goes around judges or criticize others, because his judgment and criticism is not because he has a tendency to judge and criticize, rather for the benefit of other people. That's why when Srila Prabhupada called someone like rascals or fools, it's kind of a loving anger. Oh, this person is so intelligent, as so close, he can be a devotee of Krishna, but he is misutilizing. Not just he is misutilizing his intelligence, he's actually misdirecting hundreds and thousands of other people. So that's when Srila Prabhupada would get actually angry, because Krishna has come to this world performing pastimes to reclaim the souls, but these people are actually taking Krishna away from away from Krishna. So in that mood of actually anger, he speaks that. So it's not out of any personal motivation or vengeance. So, O great Supreme Lord, offensive persons whose internal vision has been too affected by external materialistic activities cannot see your lotus feet, but they are seen by your pure devotees. So it said, if you really want to see the Lord, then having an offensive mentality actually stops our internal vision from our ability to perceive Krishna. That's why then we don't have any satisfaction or happiness in the same processes of devotion, from which great advanced devotees actually manifest ecstatic symptoms. The same chanting, the same dancing before the Lord, worshipping the deities, residing in the holy places, and serving the Vaishnavas and studying scriptures. These same forms of devotional service manifest ecstasy in the body of great devotees, but it cannot manifest the same in a practitioner who is offensive in his attitude. So it is said the Lord is present everywhere, but one who is offensive or one whose internal vision is not developed cannot actually see. So one's spiritual vision develops proportionately to one's giving up the debased mentality of unnecessarily enjoying matter. So when we are trying to enjoy our senses, this is how these verses are connected from verse 1 to verse 6. If we are engaged in trying to enjoy our senses, then we'll always be in that enjoying and controller mentality. So when we deal with world, other objects, and when we deal with other people, we are always thinking in that mentality. Okay, maybe this person is an obstruction for my enjoyment, or is a competitor for my enjoyment, or has something better to enjoy. So in that way, because of our debased mentality of unnecessarily enjoying matter, limits our ability to deal with others respectfully. So that is why controlling senses is coming all the way to actually respecting a pure devotee. Because if we disrespect, then our devotion service will be lost. So it is not that, okay, it's my devotion services, I'll try to figure out my own style, I'll not control my senses, I can cut corners with the principles, but still I can continue to chant, and I can somehow figure out a way to actually please Krishna and become advanced like that. We cannot actually manufacture a path to advance in Krishna consciousness. It is already given by the great devotees, Mahajanas. And Srila Rupa Goswami, being the leader of all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, is saying, begin with controlling the senses, because it has its internal connection to all our activities as devotees, including respecting our ability to respect other people comes from our ability to control our senses. So now we saw Srila Prabhupada's purport, various salient points that Srila Prabhupada presented, and some references from his purports and lectures. And now we will see the commentary by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which is Upadeshamrita Bhasha. So these points will be repeated, but there can be some details which are different. So that's why I've just quoted the whole thing. So don't think it's just a repetition. There are some details which are different. When Ganga water mixes with foam and mud, it does not lose its transcendental nature. In the same way, a pure devotee does not become conditioned because of faults in his birth, nature, and body. So he gives three: birth, nature, and body. Birth in a particular family, land, community. Nature is sometimes he may be harsh, sometimes he may be, even he says, lazy. And the body is he may have a dark complexion, or he may have a deformed body, may have some physical disabilities, these kind of things. Therefore, even if you see faults in a devotee, such as his body is ugly, he's from a low caste, or his behavior is harsh or rude, you should never insult him by calling him conditioned. Here he is specifically speaking about a person who is Uttamadhikari. Seeing his pure devotion, you should always glorify him. So this is Piyusha Varshini Virti. This is also by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. One is a small commentary, another one is an elaborate commentary. So even if one sees faults in pure devotees, it is not proper to consider them materially conditioned. This is instructed in the 6th verse. He says, what is the purpose of this verse? Even if one sees faults in a pure devotee, it's not proper to consider them materially conditioned. We should not ascribe to it. Yeah, because I see this fault, he cannot be a pure devotee because he has this particular fault. So we cannot consider them materially conditioned. It's not possible for pure devotees to be bad association or commit namaparad. You see, this is the standard of a pure devotee he is speaking about. That he is like a great association, he is satsanga, and he never commits namaparad. That means he is chanting a Shuddha Nam, the non-offensive chanting he is performing. So there may be a few faults in their body, birth, or disposition. Ugly characteristics, sickness, a deformed body, or bad looks due to old age, and so on. All these are faults of the body. Low birth, harshness, and laziness. We see in the scriptures also, sometimes there are great devotees taking birth in a low family. Or harshness, some may be very straight spoken, like whatever is there in their hearts, they'll just speak it. They're like straightforward. So it might come out like harshness. Some may be seem to be lazy. May not like, they may just go about their activities in their own way, or all innate faults due to birth. So Ganga water does not give up its transcendental nature because of bubbles, foam, and mud. In the same way, Vaishnavas who have realized their soul's constitutional identity, whom he is speaking about, this verse is speaking about those Vaishnavas who have realized their soul's constitutional identity, Atma Swarupa. They are not contaminated by the faults of material conditioning arising from birth in a material body or the concomitant changes of the body. So gauging a pure devotee who has actually achieved that level of realization, knowing his Atma Smarupa, gauging him by his birth or by his height or by his color or by his accent is not a very intelligent thing. It's an offensive thing. Therefore, if a sadhaka who sees such faults, so the whole verse is for a sadhaka who's trying to advance in devotion service, how he should deal with a pure devotee and what he should not do. Therefore, if a sadhaka who sees such faults considers such a pure devotee inferior and fit to be rejected, he becomes a nama aparadhi. Why is he considered a nama aparadhi? Where is the connection? He is actually committing offense against a Vaishnava, right? Why is he considered a nama aparadhi then?
Is it because he's judging another Vaishnava from his own platform?
True, but how does it become a nama aparadh?
Because it's against. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Agape?
Isn't one of the 10 offenses to consider a spiritual master like an ordinary human being or something like that?
True, there are two things related there. Yes, there are two. First offense itself against the holy name is to blaspheme the Vaishnavas. And there is another one to consider the spiritual master an ordinary person and disobey his instructions specifically. So they both could be, because we are dealing with a Uttama Adhikari. If he's considered a spiritual master, then he should not be considered a normal person and cannot be corrected or cannot be seen with a materialistic vision. And in general, as a Vaishnava, he is also a Vaishnava. Committing an offense against a Vaishnava is also a Namaparad. So in both of these categories. Thank you. That's why he is considered as a nama aparadhi, because even though he is committing offense against a devotee. And the next one is the commentary by Upadeshamrita Anuvritti by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he says, do not see a devotee with mundane eyes because there are faults in his disposition, birth, or he has bodily defects. Because of the potency of its inherent nature, Ganga water does not lose its nature of being liquid transcendence if mixed with bubbles, foam, and mud. Similarly, don't think that there is a lack of bhakti in the devotee when you see with your mundane vision a multitude of faults in him. So if we see in this particular, what is the inherent nature? There is an inherent nature of Ganga. That is, it's coming from the Supreme Lord. It's transcendently pure and it can purify. What is the inherent nature of an advanced devotee? For which we need to actually respect him.
His love for Krishna.
sees the
Yeah, his love for Krishna, someone said.
Yes.
Yeah.
to see this body is everyone is not a body with a soul.
Everybody is not a body with a soul. What do you mean by that?
So during I think in previous couple of slides you said, right, the pure devotee, or when you deal with the Uttamadhikari, you will see not the bodily complexion, but see it as the soul, right, serving Krishna.
True. So the inherent nature is that he is the soul, he is not this body. And as Mataji also said, what is the nature of that soul? Inherent nature of the soul is to love Krishna.
To serve and love Krishna.
Love Krishna. And especially in this case of a pure devotee, he has completely awakened that ability. His ability to please Krishna is not a dormant ability. It's completely awakened ability. It's fully manifested in his activities. He is giving full pressure to Krishna through his activities. So that is the inherent nature we need to consider and not the external manifestations of some faults. So that's what Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says. And he also says, do not see a devotee with mundane eyes because there are faults. We just saw it. And no birth considerations. So this is another thing that he speaks about. If misbehavior is seen in a devotee who is realized in bhajan, the person who sees such misbehavior is an offender. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur puts the full responsibility on the person who observes. Because this devotee is realized in bhajan, any misbehavior that this person observes is basically from his own heart. He has his particular value system and he has particular faults. He just is judging based on those. That is why to be involved in misbehavior does not destroy Ananya Bhakti. He goes to the next level. Even if that person was involved in a misbehavior, he just spoke harshly. That does not destroy Ananya Bhakti, because the Ananya Bhakti has more power. A simple small misbehavior cannot overcome the potency of unalloyed, unwavering devotion. But for the less intelligent observer, it is especially harmful of such observer of such misbehavior. Just understanding, considering this advanced devotees having this misbehavior is offensive for this person, but the person being a very advanced soul, his Ananya Bhakti will not be destroyed. He who does not see a pure devotee materially, but sees his Ananya Bhajan, unalloyed devotion, is not implicated by seeing a Mahabhagavat, engaged in misbehavior, and soon attains the nature of a saintly person himself. How can we become a saintly person? Just respecting advanced devotees and by seeing that they have realized. Even if we see any materially some imperfection, overlooking that, if we see, yeah, his Ananya Bhajan, his unalloyed devotional service is awakened, and that's why he is a Mahabhagavat. In this way, when we see him, just because we give the benefit of doubt and see that devotee in a proper light, we ourselves will become a saintly person. To restrict devotion to Lord Hari only to devotees who were born in the family line of the Lord, Acharyas, or great Vaishnavas who have taken shelter of the path of devotional service means one is seeing with materialistic vision, seeing bodily faults, etc. Historically, during the times of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, even when Srila Prabhupada was practicing in India, the caste Goswami system was a very prominent thing. They were not allowing anybody who was not born in a certain family to be accepted as bona fide Vaishnavas. So that was a whole big movement. That is why those references are very strongly given by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he also says, don't instruct an advanced Vaishnava. So let's read it because there are some points which are helpful. There will never be any auspiciousness for the Jiva who critically looks upon the behavior of a perfected great souls, Siddha Mahatma, the gurus of the Vaishnavas, and considers them depraved and lowly. Therefore, it is Vaishnava Aparadh to try to bring the Siddha Bhakta to the moral path, thinking him fit for instruction because of seeing him with material vision and considering him materially conditioned. There is a difference between a sadhaka in whom rati has not awakened, ajata rati sadhaka, and a siddha bhakta who has achieved that rati. Understanding this difference, one should be considered the disciple and the other the spiritual master. So the spiritual master should not be given instructions. The spiritual master should not accept instructions from the disciple. This is to be carefully considered. So he's saying there is a difference. This Siddha Bhakta or this advanced devotee has actually awakened the platform of Rati, which is like Bhava. But a sadhaka who in whom that is not awakened, he is in a different category, even though they are all devotees. So one is considered a spiritual master and the other is considered a disciple. So this is the commentary by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur.